I want to show you 3 AI governance jobs. One wants you to run risk reviews, write policies, and manage governance workflows. Another one wants you to understand model drifts, bias, explainability, and AI monitoring, but it does not clearly ask you to write code. And the third one wants Python, SQL, model validation, and hands-on technical execution. And this is the part that is strange in all of this. They can all have almost the same job titles. And I think that is why so many people are confused about whether they are technical enough for AI governance. One person looks at a technical AI governance job and says, you absolutely have to know how to code. And another one looks at a risk or compliance role and says, no, you don't. And both of them can point to real jobs. People have been asking me to weigh in on this for a while. So rather than give you another opinion, I want to answer the question with a little more evidence. But as I look at the jobs, a more useful question starts to emerge. Are we actually looking at one career or several different careers hiding under the same label? So I reviewed more than 100 AI governance related job listings. I removed the ones that I could not independently substantiate. And I analyzed 65 roles whose requirements I could actually review. And once I categorized them, the confusion started to make sense. AI governance is not one career path, it is 3. And this is what I found. Of the 65 roles, 46% required hands-on technical execution. 43% required meaningful technical literacy, but did not clearly require coding. 11% of them did not identify hands-on technical execution as a core requirement. At first, those numbers look like a simple technical versus non-technical split, but that is not really what the jobs are showing. They are showing 3 different kinds of AI governance work. Pattern 1, you govern the process. These are roles that are centered on policy, risk, compliance, audit, program management, oversight, vendor governance, and organizational controls. Pattern 2, you govern the system. These roles expect you to understand model behavior, understand drift, bias, explainability, life cycle, monitoring, controls, and technical risk. But you're not necessarily the person building the model. Pattern 3, you govern through technical execution. These jobs sit much closer to engineering, data science, model validation, or AI security. In this pattern, coding, technical testing, architecture, or model work is part of the job itself. And once you see these 3 patterns, the question now changes. The question is no longer, am I technical enough for AI governance? The better question is, which kind of AI governance work am I really trying to enter? So let's start with a category that people are often told does not exist. Tech systems, AI governance risk review consultant. This role is about AI intake, risk triage, governance workflows, policy interpretation, use case documentation, third-party risk, and stakeholder interviews. What I did not identify is Python, SQL, model development, or a technical degree requirement. So if you already work in risk, audit, compliance, privacy, or governance, some of that work may look familiar. But you don't have to come from GRC. If you're coming from marketing, operations, project management, HR, or other business functions, you can also build towards this kind of role with the right governance training. The technology is newer, but many of the underlying skills like judgment, process, documentation, stakeholder management, and decision-making are not. Crocs, AI governance and risk analyst. Crocs follows the same pattern. AI governance framework, acceptable use policy, data handling controls, AI intake, oversight, audit trails. This is not a software engineering job. It is governance work applied to AI. Elucian, Assistant General Counsel, Data Privacy and AI. And then here is the legal version. The qualification in this case is not how well can you code. It is, can you understand privacy law, AI regulation, data governance, legal risk, and translate technical issues into legal strategy. So this is still AI governance. It is just a different form of AI governance. And I've seen this first pattern play out with people making the transition. One of my students came into the program from marketing, and today that student has transitioned into AI governance. And I want you to notice what that transition did not require. They didn't have to erase their previous career or start over as a programmer. They learned the governance skills that they were missing and connected them to capabilities they already had. And that is what this first group of jobs is showing us. When the job is centered on governance processes, risk reviews, documentation, controls, stakeholder and organizational decision making, your previous career may contain more relevant experiences than the job title makes obvious. So if you come from marketing, operations, project management, compliance, HR, or another business function, don't immediately look at AI governance and ask, where is my computer science degree? First, ask, what part of my existing experience already maps into governing the process? That is a very different career question. Pillsbury, International Rescue Committee, these are different industries, but the same general pattern. In my sample, 7 of the 65 roles fell clearly into this category. That's roughly about 11%. So this door is real, but it was the smaller ones. And this is where the story gets more interesting, because the most relevant opportunities for career changers, I found them in the middle. 28 of the 65 roles are in here. This is the mixed middle. And I think this is the category that most people misunderstand. These employers are not saying you need to be a software engineer, but they're also not saying you can govern AI without understanding how AI works. They wanted something in between. Guardian Life, head of AI governance. Look at the language. Enterprise AI governance, lifecycle oversight, risk tiering, policy and control design, executive reporting, and model risk literacy. That phrase, model risk literacy, tells you what this category is. You need to understand how models can fail, how these failures create risks, and what controls should exist around them. But you're not necessarily expected to build a model yourself. And I have another student whose path looks very different. This student came from a data and privacy background, and it's now working in AI governance. That transition makes sense when you understand this second pattern. They were not starting from zero. Data already gave them a foundation for understanding how information moves through systems. Privacy gave them some experience around risk, controls, appropriate use, accountability, and what organizations should and should not do with data. AI governance sits right at the intersection of these two worlds. So their transition was not, I need to abandon what I used to do and become something completely different. It was much closer to, I need to extend what I already know into the governance of AI systems. And that is what the mixed middle rewards, extending what you already know rather than starting over. Let's look at GE Venover. GE Venover, governance and responsible AI leader. This one pushes the middle even further. Practical understanding of AI, machine learning, generative AI, model risk management, drift, performance monitoring, bias evaluation, OWASP, machine learning risks, MITRE Atlas. This is not superficial knowledge. You need to understand the technology deeply enough to ask intelligent questions, challenge the decisions, design controls, and recognize where something is going wrong. But I didn't identify coding as a core requirement in this job. So this is a distinction: technical judgment without technical production. Let's look at Amgen, responsible AI manager, agentic AI governance. And this middle category is also where some of the newest work is appearing. Amgen was hiring specifically for agentic AI governance. That means agentic risk assessment, human oversight, tool governance, MCP governance, model monitoring. Now, imagine saying, I don't code, so I don't need to understand agents. That will be a serious problem. You may not need to build that agent, but you need to understand what changes when the system becomes more autonomous. And that is where the real career implication starts to appear. For many of you, the question is not, do I need Python? The question is, do I understand AI well enough to govern it? So to compete in this middle category, you need 4 kinds of literacy. Number 1, understand the AI lifecycle. Where does the data come from? How is the system developed? How is it evaluated? How is it deployed? What happens after deployment? Number 2, understand model behavior. What does performance mean? What is drift? What is bias? What does explainability tell you? When should a human intervene? Then number 3, understand controls. What gets documented? What needs approval? What gets monitored? What triggers escalation? And then number 4, learn to translate. You need to sit between the engineer, the lawyer, the risk team, the executive, and sometimes the regulator, and help those groups understand each other. That translation skill shows up again and again and again. And I found the same pattern across several other employers. Understand the system deeply enough to govern it without necessarily being the person who builds it. For many career changes, this is probably your target lane. I've also analyzed where these jobs are hiding. I'll link that video for you. But first, let's get to the third pattern, because I think this is where the term "you need to code" argument becomes completely valid. Now, these are the technical roles. Palantir, privacy and civil liberties engineer. This one is straightforward. Full stack engineering, privacy by design, policy as code, distributed systems, production programming. This is an engineering role with governance built into it. Governance knowledge alone is not enough. Toyota, AI governance manager. Now, here is where things get a little dangerous for job seekers. Look at the title, AI governance manager. If you only looked at the title, you might assume this belongs in the mixed middle. Then you start to read the requirements: SQL, Python, model risk management, second line oversight. That changes the job completely. New York Power Authority, AI governance senior analyst. Same problem. The title sounds like governance. Then you get into the requirements: SQL, Python, data lineage, metadata management. Numora, AI governance in the title, basic Python and SQL in the requirement. This is where the biggest twist in the data becomes clear. Crocs can call a job AI governance and risk analyst. Toyota can call a job AI governance manager. Both look like AI governance. One emphasizes policy, risk, controls. The other explicitly asks for Python, SQL, model risk. Same field, completely different candidates. And this leads to the rule that I want you to remember. The title is the label. The requirements are the truth. And this is why the argument over whether AI governance is technical keeps going in circles. People are looking at different parts of the market. The engineer sees Palantir or Toyota and says, of course you need technical skills. The compliance professional sees Crocs or tech systems and say, no, you don't. And both of them are right. They're just looking at slightly different professions hiding under the same umbrella. Now, one more thing. If a listing is asking for basic Python or SQL, those foundations can absolutely be learned. You don't need another 4-year degree just to understand SQL or Python. Now, let's step back for just a second. These 65 jobs are telling us something bigger. AI governance looks like one profession from the outside, but inside the market, it behaves more like 3. People who govern the process, people who govern the system, and people who govern through technical execution. 46% required hands-on technical execution. 43% required meaningful technical literacy without a coding requirement. 11% did not identify hands-on and technical execution as a core requirement. Approximately about 89% of the roles required some meaningful technical fluency. It means that 89% expect you to understand the technology at some level. And that is a part I think most people are missing. The market is not saying everybody must code. And it is not saying you do not need to understand technology. What it is saying is this: technical depth varies by lane, and the common skill underneath all three lanes is translation. Explain a regulation to an engineer, explain model risk to an executive, explain technical constraints to legal. Translate what the builders are doing into risk, into controls, accountability, documentations, decisions. That ability to move between technical and non-technical worlds may be the core skill of AI governance. This is where I think a lot of career changers lose time. They search AI governance and then they apply to everything that appears. But if this data is right, that is a mistake because you may be applying to 3 different career tracks without realizing it. So when you find a listing, ask 3 questions. Question 1, what is actually required? Look for things like Python, SQL, model development, quantitative validation, security testing, cloud architecture, or ML ops. And keep required separate from preferred. Python in the nice to have section is not the same thing as you must be proficient in Python. Question number 2, where does the role sit? Does it sit in risk, compliance, legal, audit, strategy, engineering, data science, or security? The team it resides in tells you a lot about the technical bar. Governance inside risk and compliance tends to look very different from governance inside engineering. Question 3, are you governing the builders or are you one of the builders? If your job is to review, challenge, approve, monitor, set controls, interpret policy, and transfer risks, you are probably closer to pattern 1 or pattern 2. If your job is to build code to deploy, to test, you are probably in pattern 3. That one question can save you a lot of wasted applications. And this is where the 3 patterns become useful for your job search. My marketing student and my data and privacy student both reached AI governance, but they didn't take the same road. One built from business and process skills, the other extended an existing data and governance foundation. So if you come from governance, risk, audit, compliance, privacy, or law, your strongest opportunity may be in pattern 1 or pattern 2. You may need to add AI lifecycle literacy, model risk literacy, and AI controls, and the ability to work credibly across different teams, especially technical teams. If you come from data, engineering, cybersecurity, machine learning, or software, technical governance may actually be your advantage. Your gap may instead be risk, policy, regulation, governance frameworks, documentation, and accountability. And if you come from outside both technology and traditional governance, don't assume there is only one path. Depending on your transferable skills, you may build towards pattern 1 or the mixed middle. What matters is identifying what you already bring and what you still need to add for the lane that you want. And there is one reason I would not turn the 46% number into a universal rule. These 65 listings are just a snapshot, not a census. The exact percentages will move as the market changes. But the more enduring finding is a pattern underneath the percentages. AI governance is not one technical bar. It is multiple kinds of work operating under the same label. Same field, similar titles, but different candidates. The title is the label. The requirements are the truth. And finding the right lane is only half the problem. The next hurdle is proving that you can do the work before someone gives you that title. And that is exactly what I show you in the AI risk assessment video on screen.